I think a huge theme of today's talks is that even though there's an emergence of many what could be considered assistive technologies using AI, there is still going to be a huge reliance on quality content. And I think that's where GovHub comes in for our agency partners, providing that engine to create quality content. So we're going to finish up today's talks with an update on GovHub, what's new and what we've been working on and what's to come. So in today's talk, we'll touch on Bloom. I know there's been a lot of talk about the wonderful design in several webinars and newsletters, but today we're going to look at a few of the ways that the redesign improved GovHub as a whole. Next, we'll talk about what we've been working on alongside this Bloom project, which is yet another update to Drupal and how that may or may not affect you guys. Then we'll talk about how we've also been working in several ways to shift our focus to making a better content editor experience within GovHub. And then lastly, we will briefly talk about a few initiatives we have for GovHub in the next fiscal year. So let's get started. So a few of you are actually rolling out your sites onto Bloom this week. And many of you have attended the webinars that we've discussed, where we've discussed Bloom and all of the benefits to the new design for your visitors. But today, I want to hone in on what went into some of the decisions we made behind the Bloom design. What are some of the gains that we achieved to make GovHub a better product? We explored whether it was best to build upon what we already had, or look into the code of build upon what we already had in the current code and the current theme, or use the redesign as opportunity to build something better. So with the inception of the redesign product, we as a team really wanted to thoughtfully consider the code behind this new look and feel for your visitors on the front end. We wanted to ensure that it wasn't creating a burden for our engineering team to maintain or to build upon. So one of the key pillars of the code discovery was ensuring that there was not going to be a major impact to performance because of this new and awesome design. Another philosophy we wanted to explore in the code as well as in the design was inclusivity. So I know you've probably been hearing this term a lot, and it's kind of hard to understand what it really means in terms of like your digital presence. But we wanted to explore how we could be more inclusive. How can we make sure that the code that we're producing to support this design is future facing? So we also wanted to look at the maintainability. That was key, maintainability. That was a key factor as well. As GovHub grows and we have to, live with this design for a while, we wanted to ensure that we laid a foundation strong enough to support any future endeavors for GovHub. And of course, a key component to just about everything that we do here at DSGA is accessibility. So right before we began this Bloom redesign project, actually, we had just concluded an accessibility audit with our friends at Civic Actions, where we discovered several opportunities to make our sites more accessible. One of which was improving the main navigation. Now, a few issues that were discovered with the main navigation in the current theme were things like improper focus order, which created an unnatural way of navigating the dropdown, which ultimately led to just needing to have more consideration for our users who depend on keyboards to navigate websites. So, and there was actually a lot that we had done up until that point to the navigation to make it as accessible as it was. For instance, if you could probably see in this loop video here that there's a slight delay when you hover over a main navigation item before the drop down appears. And we did that on purpose to give users enough time to move their mouse into that drop down, which wasn't the case until that point and caused a real accessibility issue for people with mobile impairments. But in order to do that, we had to implement a lot of JavaScript and a lot of code, which had a significant impact to the performance as well as the maintainability of this navigation. So the recommendation from that audit was to literally start from scratch. They were just like, it's not a good idea to continue to build on what you have. The best recommendation we have for you all is to start anew. So we took the Bloom redesign project as an opportunity to do that. And to further illustrate the beauty and importance of government taking advantage of open source technologies like Drupal, we were able to leverage some of the code from Drupal's current default theme called Olivero. Now, this theme was actually built with accessibility as the focus and the purpose, and is actually named after a major accessibility advocate within the Drupal community. So now, with the Bloom redesign, as you can see, the navigation is a lot more smooth, more intuitive, better suited for assistive technology use. But what you may not see are its positive impacts on the performance of your sites, and how it's given us the ability to build upon this navigation in the future. Helped us maintain it, set a foundation for us being able to maintain it. Now, one thing we discovered as we got into the redesign is that accessibility and inclusivity actually go hand in hand. I'll read you this quote from author and UI designer and advocate for accessibility, Cameron Chapman. Inclusive design is closely related to accessibility, but rather an outcome. It's a methodology for how to approach design. It's a process for creating a design that can be used by a diverse group of people. So behind that inclusive design, let me back up. So while accessibility is about removing the barriers that prevent people with disabilities from taking part in our society, inclusivity takes it a step further by including people with disabilities from the beginning, considering them as a valued member of society. So not making special concessions for people, but including them in the people that we're designing for. So behind the inclusive design, we ensured that users that depended on assistive technologies also got the benefits of an inclusive approach to building the code. And not to get too nerdy into what is going on in the background, I will just touch on a few of those things. So we were intentional about using rims instead of pixels as the unit of measurements. You guys can Google rims later, or you can send us a support request and ask all those questions. But it's basically a unit of measurement that's used in the styling and different aspects of how the content is presented on the front end. And we wanted to use this unit of measurement to make sure that the continuity of the experience for an assistant or assistive tech user was maintained. So for instance, if a user has a default font size set on their machine, using that unit of measurement on websites makes it easier for the machine to transform that text to match their default settings. So that's just another example of how we're trying to make GovHub become more and more future facing. One task we baked into the scope of the redesign was to remove unnecessary code, or technical debt is what we called it. So by doing this, we addressed the impacts to performance and maintainability of the theme going forward. And lastly, the Drupal community, really the tech world in general, has made a major shift towards innovation by dropping support for IE 11, Internet Explorer 11. So now that we no longer have to support IE 11, we can take advantage of more modern front-end technologies when building these themes that are supported by the most commonly used browsers. So therefore, there's no need to customize the code just to ensure support for a particular browser. So those are just a few things I wanted to share with you all that you may not glean from simply looking at this beautiful new design, which I'm really excited about. All right, so speaking of the Drupal community and innovation, we are in the middle of another update to our version of Drupal. So some of you may recall the update to Drupal 8, which was a huge undertaking. But do any of you remember us updating to Drupal 9? No? No? Nobody? Well, good, because you were not supposed to notice. The success of that update was that it did not disrupt you at all. And that will be the case with the Drupal 10 update. You should not experience any disruption to content creation or visitors accessing your site. But what does that mean? What does it mean each time that we embark on one of these updates? Well, it's important for us to be on the latest supported version of Drupal, primarily for security. Outdated, deprecated, unsupported code is a nefarious actor's dream come true. For the sake of mitigating security risks, we cannot continue to maintain outdated versions of Drupal. So besides that, maintaining outdated code also impacts the level of support we can receive from the Drupal community. Again, Drupal is an open source tool that is great because there are thousands of developers supporting it. The further away you get from a supported version of Drupal, the less reliant we can be on that strong support community. Performance takes a hit as it becomes more of a burden to maintain the outdated code. With patches and custom solutions, more code to maintain, more time spent maintaining old code is not what we want for GovHub. And like I mentioned before, Drupal 10 also drops support for IE11, which means there's more opportunity for innovation. So yeah, again, less time spent maintaining old code means more time for developing new experiences for our constituents as well as our content editors. Which leads me to touch on what we've been working towards. A lot of what we've been working on behind the scenes has been about improving the experience for our content editors. So we want to make it easier for you to take advantage of all of this new exciting AI technology by making sure any barriers to creating quality content are removed. But before we get into that, I did want to take a moment to again plug the GovHub Advisory Committee, where we get a lot of great insight to build out the product roadmap. The advisory committee is a part of the Digital Center of Excellence, and we want to invite you all to get involved. The Georgia Digital Center of Excellence improves the state's presence and citizen experience on all state-supported platforms. So throughout the statewide community of private and public sector professionals, the DCOE oversees digital standards and guidelines and promotes growth and maturity across the state's digital landscape. We're accepting nominations. So if you are interested, or if you know someone who may be a good candidate to participate in our GovHub Advisory Committee, please nominate them. We're looking for those in public service or civic technology who are responsible and skilled in either strategizing, producing, or delivering digital services. So if that fits you or you know anybody, please consider nominating them or yourselves. So some of the feedback on things like usage of content types, data retention policies within different organizations, and typical workflows with creating content has allowed us to enhance our standards and guidelines for accessibility and usability, and has guided a lot of decisions around the features that we're implementing on GovHub. So one opportunity that we gleaned from your feedback was that some of the features of content moderation, such as revision history and scheduling, could be better. Our UX team, comprised of Rachel Hart and Julie Fay, has analyzed some of that feedback, which has allowed us to build out the product roadmap to shift our focus to creating more productive workflows for you while creating your content. So here are some of the objectives that we want to focus on with improving the content moderation process. So we want to enable editors to improve content management processes with clear moderation states, right? There's different moderation states: published, archive, draft. Make it easy for you to use those different states and what they mean to your content moderation or your content creation process. Provide more informative revision history for easier version control. So we've already started rolling out some enhancements to our revision history. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to look, but we have way more informative revision history than we have in the past. And we also wanted to create a more productive, we also want to create a more productive workflow between GovHub roles. So kind of how Catherine mentioned that they have a workflow within their organization between, who can post content and who can't, we want to help facilitate those different workflows amongst different agencies. So we're looking into ways that we can do that within GovHub. So some of the results that we hope to achieve from those objectives are to resolve any functional issues or barriers related to the moderation states. So take some of the guesswork out for you about what needs to happen with your content after you're done creating it. More informative revision history. Like I mentioned, we have implemented some more enhancements to the revision history, but I think there's still some opportunities that we can explore. And we want to have more functional distinctions between the roles to create better internal processes, like I mentioned. So, we have editorial leads, editors, creators, reviewers, just kind of give them more functionality as it relates to working together within GovHub. All right, so one user interface we plan to address is the scheduling interface. So we feel like agencies may not be taking advantage of this feature because the interface is a bit confusing. It's not entirely apparent what the outcome of your content scheduling will be. So we are working to improve that. Another thing we're looking at to fix are issues with the different moderation states. Like I mentioned, really analyzing their differences. What does it do to your content when you moved it into these different moderation states? And is that apparent to the content editor? Potentially removing workflows that aren't really used or necessary. How can we eliminate some of the decision-making time for our content editors? If you didn't have to spend a bunch of time trying to figure out what state your content should go in, I think it'll create a better environment for you to create that quality content. And lastly, along with our recent rollout of multi-factor authentication and with the emergence of AI and all of its inherent security concerns, we want to make sure that we're keeping up with any security best practices that we can. So the advisory committee has actually been instrumental in giving us insight into the different data retention policies at agencies to be sure that the GovHub roadmap aligns with that and what's best for government in that regard. So beginning with web form submission data, a lot of you guys collect a bunch of data through your web forms, through your sites. We're starting to form policies around how long we can retain that data on your site and what types of data it's appropriate to retain and things like that, for how long, and who's responsible and all those fun things. So we will, continue to use the advisory committee for that insight, for that feedback. So again, I encourage anyone who's interested in participating and providing that feedback to get involved. All right, so now that we've discussed what we've been working on, let's quickly touch on what we hope to get into in the coming fiscal year. I think another theme of today's GovTalks has been how imperative it is to build future-facing digital products. So as Nikhil mentioned in his keynote, we are working on our orchard design system. We are working on our orchard design system. Here you can see our first component, a button. Okay, this button may be familiar once you start to see your site with the Bloom theme, because we're using that design as the basis of our design system, obviously. So as we dedicate more time to this project, we will be getting even more feedback from the advisory committee to ensure that we're on the right track with building out these components in this design system. We want to ultimately make it easier for web and app developers to ensure their accessibility compliance and use best practices when it comes to building user experiences. So this would help speed up development, having this design system on hand. Nikhil also mentioned CK Editor 5, and I'm sure a bunch of you were like, huh? But that's okay. You know it as the WYSIWYG, but the engine behind it is called CK Editor. And so with the update to Drupal 10, we will need to update CK Editor to take advantage of the improvements CK Editor 5 offers, the latest version of CK Editor. like better embed displays. So this is what it currently looks like now. And before, I didn't want to give you guys what it could look like before we updated it. So of course, you know, you will be informed on all updates that will be super apparent once you log in and start creating content. So yeah, so we wanted to take advantage of some of the native functionality of CK Editor 5, like better embed displays and the ease of use for the language of parts feature. So that feature is there now, but it's not really easy to use. It basically allows you to highlight text that you are putting in the WYSIWYG that's in a different language, and it's better for screen reader to recognize that. So we really want to take advantage of those new things that CK Editor 5 offers to make you to allow you to be more inclusive with your content creation. And finally, we want to explore offering GovHub sites in dark mode or high contrast mode. So dark mode can be helpful to everyone, not just users with disabilities. I use everything on dark mode. It just makes my eyes happy, right? This would not only take our accessibility compliance to the next level, but further our initiatives to be more inclusive. So today I want to leave you with some takeaways. Know that we are shifting our focus to improving the content editor experience. We have spent a lot of time in the last year making sure the visitor experience was great, and now we want to shift our focus back to you guys. We're maintaining our commitment to accessibility and stand on the latest supported version of Drupal for many reasons. I explained why that's important. And just as a slight flex, 75%, upwards of 75% of the sites that are on Drupal are still on Drupal 7. So we are really on the game with staying up to date with Drupal. And even with the introduction of AI, guys, and other advanced technologies, content remains king. The computer can only do what we tell it to do, and it can only give information that we feed it. So we got to make sure that we're giving it good info. I think that's what a lot of the talks have been about today. So with that, I will conclude the talk about GovHub. Do we have any questions?
All righty. Thank you, Jasmine, for your talk on what's new and what's to come. There is one question, and you may have hit on it already, but can you repeat for the audience, what is the current Drupal version of GovHub that we're using?
We're on Drupal 9, and I think it's 9.8.5 if you want to get super precise. But we are on the latest available supported version of Drupal 9.
All righty, very good. And that is the only question we have. So we'll go ahead and wrap up the Q&A segment for the sake of time. Thank you.